making sure high-quality teachers remain in the classroom. That's the goal of a new piece of legislation. Here to discuss the issue is State Representative Ryan Aument. Welcome to the program, Representative.
Thank you.
Now, from what I understand, we had a piece of legislation introduced by Representative Tim Krieger that you amended. Before we get into the amendment, can you explain what House Bill 1722 does?
Yes, thank you very much. Representative Tim Krieger introduced late last year House Bill 1722 that essentially whose goal is to end the last in, first out policy. In the unfortunate circumstance in which a school district must downsize due to declining enrollment or budget constraints, the current practice is educators cannot be furloughed for economic reasons. So schools are faced with the choice of eliminating programs, and when they do so, they must eliminate staff based on seniority. In my view, in the prime sponsor's view, that doesn't serve our students well, it doesn't serve our children well, and it certainly doesn't serve our educators well, as in my view it discriminates against less experienced teachers in the classroom. So he introduced legislation. We had a hearing in the House Education Committee in December where we had various stakeholders that would come in, and the idea of the legislation is that we would allow school districts to furlough for economic reasons, and when those decisions are made, the decisions would be tied to the new teacher evaluation system so that we're dismissing less effective teachers first and protecting high quality educators, ensuring that our students have access to a high quality teacher in every classroom.
So then what exactly does your amendment change about House Bill 1722?
My amendment further clarifies as to how those suspensions, how the furlough would to take place. So what we've done is we've said, yes, that furloughs will be based on the new teacher evaluation system, but it specifies that we would dismiss first teachers who are rated as fails under the new teacher evaluation system, followed by teachers who were needs improvement, followed by teachers who were rated as proficient. The last to be furloughed under the legislation would be teachers who were rated as distinguished. It further clarifies that if educators are rated at the same point on the rating scale as within the fails, within needs improvement, that those decisions would then be based on seniority. But what we want to ensure we're doing is that the last to be furloughed are teachers who are our high quality teachers. The first educators to be furloughed would be those who are less effective. We also had language that we attempted. We were eventually unsuccessful at this point, but we attempted in my amendment to also change tenure. Tenure currently is awarded after 3 years. We attempted to extend that to 5 years, and then to ensure that teachers were rated as proficient or distinguished 2 consecutive evaluations prior to being awarded tenure. So that's something we'll continue to work on. We weren't able to get that language into House Bill 1722, but we were able to specify in which order teachers would be furloughed. And then we also state very clearly that in the event that we are able to reinstate teachers, recall teachers back into the schools, that they would be reinstated, first the distinguished teachers, followed by proficient, followed by needs improvement, and again, those teachers rated as fails would be the last to be reinstated.
Now, you authored the legislation that put this new rating system in effect, and I know we talked about it here on previous programs, and if anyone wants to see that, they can go to your website to see that. But if they don't get that opportunity, can you tell us a little bit about how these ratings are handled and how they're calculated?
Yeah, I think it's important as this legislation is moving forward that we remind folks as to how the new teacher evaluation system works, which is now being implemented. In 2011, I introduced legislation that would completely revamp how we conduct teacher evaluations across the state of Pennsylvania. That was passed in the summer of 2012 and is now being implemented. Previously, educators were evaluated as satisfactory or unsatisfactory, and we had across the state 98% of our teachers were rated as satisfactory. And what we saw was a system that was ineffective, that was not providing our educators with useful or meaningful or actionable feedback. And so we put in place a system. 50% of the teacher's evaluation is based on principal observations, administrator observations. 50% of the evaluation is based on multiple measures of student achievement. So student academic achievement is calculated as 50% of a teacher's evaluation. It's important to note that's not based solely on test scores, on standardized test scores. It's based on multiple measures. It's very clear in the legislation, multiple measures of student academic achievement. Then that there's a calculation based on the observations, based on the student academic achievement. A teacher is rated as either distinguished, proficient, needs improvement, or fails. And so that is now being implemented in our school districts across the Commonwealth.
Now, at a recent hearing, some concern was brought forward that this amendment that is based on your rating system that passed the House in 2012 may be a little bit too new to base on possible layoffs on. How do you respond to that criticism?
Mm-hmm. And I heard the concern at the hearing back in December. We heard the concern yesterday during the debate on the legislation and my amendment. My response, a couple of things. First, there is always a desire among those who are opposed to legislation to argue that there ought to be a delay because legislation isn't ready. And so I think it's important that we continue to move ahead, we continue to make progress. I think we can have great confidence in the new evaluation tool. It is being implemented. What we are seeing across the Commonwealth is where there is buy-in by educators, where there's buy-in by administrators, it's being implemented quite well. Where there's a desire among the educators and perhaps administrators to not be supportive, then we see some more challenges with implementation. But I think it's important to note in the amendment that is now included in the economic furlough bill that we put important protections in place. The first is within, as I mentioned earlier, within the same rating scale, as a teacher is rated as fails, for example, if there are a number of teachers rated as fails, and that exceeds the number of folks to be furloughed, then those decisions would be based within that point on the rating scale by seniority. I think that's an important protection that's in place. The second point that I would make, as we look at other states where there have been challenges with implementation, if there's a lack of training, for example, amongst administrators carrying out these new evaluations, what we find is more and more educators are being rated in the middle of the rating scale, being rated in this case as proficient. Well, again, if that were to happen in Pennsylvania, then seniority would be the manner in which these furloughs were made. So that is an important protection that's put in place. We have the experience of other states that points to the worst case scenario is the decisions would still be based on seniority. But again, I think it's important that we take a step on behalf of our young people, on behalf of our students, to protect our excellent teachers, our high-quality teachers in every classroom in the unfortunate instance in which there's a furlough.
Now, even though the bill did pass in 2012, the practice of this grading system has been going on for longer than that in some districts, correct?
That's right. There has been, and that's a great point. We had an ongoing pilot program that was taking place in a number of school districts all across the Commonwealth. So we've had many school districts with experience. There's been lessons learned. That was reflected in the legislation. There was flexibility written into the teacher evaluation legislation. The Pittsburgh Public Schools, for example, the Pittsburgh Public Schools has been at this work for the last 4 years. In fact, the Pittsburgh Public Schools had a situation in 2012 in which they had to furlough educators. And because of the data that they had collected and the work that they had done with the new teacher evaluation system, piloting the teacher evaluation system, they knew that they were furloughing 16 distinguished teachers in some of the most vulnerable schools with some of the most vulnerable student populations. And that's what we're trying to protect against. So I think we have a system in place that we can have great confidence in. The superintendent, Dr. Linda Lane from Pittsburgh Public Schools, submitted testimony at our hearing back in December, submitted again a letter of support of this important legislation that was before us yesterday. The School Boards Association, the School Administrators Association, the school business officials, all were important stakeholders, were very supportive of this legislation. So I think we can have great confidence in the step that we took yesterday, and I look forward to the full House taking action on this legislation soon.
And finally, what was the purpose of the amendment? What's your ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal, again, is to ensure that we are protecting high-quality educators. I think it's important to the teaching profession that we recruit, that we're able to recruit and retain and protect the very best. I think it's important that for our students, that our students have access to a high-quality educator in every classroom, even in the unfortunate circumstance in which a school district, due to a declining enrollment or budget challenges, must furlough staff for economic reasons. And I think it's important that we don't discriminate against high-quality teachers just because they perhaps lack experience. And so I think it's an important message for us to send that we're going to promote and protect quality teaching.
All right, Representative Aument, thanks for joining us today. You really have been a champion for education recently, and wish you luck in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today's program. If you have comments or questions about this or any other legislative matter, the contact information for Representative Aument will be on the screen in just a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join us again next time for another edition of Legislative Report.